store.
Today's episode is brought to you by the law firm of Harmony and Hanrahan, who specialize in waterway litigation. Harmony and Hanrahan will get you back on the water.
Life jackets are stored in overhead racks on the second deck. And in storage boxes on the top deck. Instructions for donning life jackets are located around the vessel.
All right.
I'm raring to go today.
This is episode 8.
Yeah. So just give me a little something about 8.
8 is great.
8 is great.
Crazy 8.
Okay. And my favorite hockey player, Alex Ovechkin, wears the number 8.
Classic.
Turn it on its side, and it's the symbol for infinity.
Yeah, that's right. So there's factoids about 8.
Now, I want to, first of all, quickly compliment you on last week. Since you told the story of the Vasa, I got so many messages from people I know who have either actually been to the museum in Stockholm or had known about the ship. It was all brand new to me, and so it was really fun to get into it for the first time and just be learning on the fly. But that ship was a big deal. That features on some like top 10 lists for most fascinating shipwrecks.
Absolutely.
So you really you hit it out of the park. And the fun thing is, this week I'm going to tell you about a boat. Like last week, some of the features of the Vasa were that
The Vasa.
it was all manufactured in one country. It was very fancy. It was very elaborate. It was very ultimately quite useless. Like within minutes of its launch, it's in the water.
I mean, it's amazing how quickly 2 years of work, primarily on those sculptures, which just makes no sense. But one thing that I thought about when I heard the episode and I heard one of your comments, if you recall, the Vasa was that sort of disruptive technology in which they switched from boarders, the primary way in which the naval battles were fought, where the guys would just like jump on board and fight. Then they switched to the cannons. And I remember you making the comment about, well, that's like a disruptive. Talk about your disruptive technology. Like you're no longer hand-to-hand combat. So it's like it changes the profile of who you even need to have on board, right? They're just lighting cannons. I think they had the 12-pounder or the 16-pounder. And so I was thinking like, okay, so a shot put is 16 pounds. Like in the Olympics.
That ball that they
throw. Like the thing that they're tossing, like the shot put. And I was thinking, like, imagine like you're an early 1600s entrepreneur. I'm going to have a bunch of really strong guys on deck, and they're going to throw these 16-pound balls on your ship. Just like cause damage. And if it hits you in the head,
and just make sure that you have enough room on deck where they can do that whole spinning around thing that they do before they do the shot put.
Exactly.
Okay, watch out, guys, because I didn't want to say this before, but we had some less than ideal results from our lurch test last week.
Right.
So before you do the shot put, like, don't do the whole spin around thing.
Pick up the lighter balls.
So we're going to talk about, because I was thinking last week's ship was 1628, I think. And we're talking about that transition where it's like, okay, people are starting to think about, let's move away from the boarding strategy and move toward guns. We're going, but I think, that's a transition that takes a while to happen, because today's ship is that I'm going to talk about is going to be a little bit later, and boarding is still going on.
Really?
Boarding doesn't totally go away.
No, I associate it with Pirates, period. Like, don't they still board in that show with Captain Phillips, or the guy, Tom Hanks, plays a part in some Pirates, modern day?
Didn't see. If I'm going to see a pirate movie, I want to see eye patches, but I don't necessarily want to see like Johnny Depp.
No, that's what I'm saying. You should see Captain whoever and Tom Hanks. The pirates board his ship.
Yeah, but I don't want to see modern pirates. I want to see like
swords.
The golden era of pirates, like 1700s Caribbean, just no Johnny Depp. That's what I'm looking
So
for.
what year are you talking about?
Okay, so let's
Yes.
do this. So, just as a framing or kind of orienting thing, this ship that I want to talk about today is more, and I know that she objected previously when I used this term in relation to Lizzie, but today's ship, we're going to be looking at more of a workhorse and a ship that shows its usefulness in different contexts for different countries, for different captains, and just keeps going.
Well, sounds very positive.
So let's get right into it. So the year that, well, let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard anything about Queen Anne's War?
It has to do with the war out of England.
Yeah, and you're right. It is a war out of England. You're on the right track here. So the bigger war that's going on in the early 1700s is called War of the Spanish Succession. It came up in one of our earlier episodes.
I'm aware of the war of the succession in the United States, like the Civil War, when the South succeeded. Succeeded?
I feel like
The
they
South
didn't
seceded.
I feel like
States in the South seceded.
they didn't succeed
Did
overall.
not
I mean, I'm sure
succeed.
there's certain ways in which they succeeded. They succeeded in setting their region back many generations. Something happens with a Spanish king where it's not clear who's going to be the heir, and there's instability in terms of who's going to be the next Spanish king. Somehow the neighboring countries all have strong opinions about it. It winds up that there's a war that's basically sort of England against France and Spain.
England against France and Spain, or is it a three-way we're all
Yes.
fighting with each other?
I think it's France and Spain are sort of on one side and England's on the other
And
one.
what year are we
And
speaking
over
of?
there in Europe, we're talking early 1700s. So I think it's like 1701 to maybe 1714, something like that. Now, another thing that happens in wars of those days is that they have, the official guys like the Navy, but then, of course, they have privateers. Now, I vaguely knew of this term. It's sort of like halfway to a pirate.
Wow.
It's like in times of war, you can operate with the blessing of your home country and you can just do whatever you want to ships from the other side. You can seize them, you can kill people on them, you can seize treasure from them because it's just sort of considered part of the war effort. Okay, so there's a lot of privateers. Now, when this War of the Spanish Succession is going on, it's also going on in the New World. And in the New World, these countries are actually, some of it's going on the ocean.
Okay.
And has to do with ships that are involved in the slave trade or in the sugar trade, and ships from, the opposing countries attacking each other. But also, I think the two sides ally with different Indian groups in America.
Interesting.
And in this theater of the war, people talk about it as Queen Anne's War.
Queen Anne's War.
It's really the same thing, but in the New World, it's sort of known as Queen Anne's War. But in Europe, we call it the War of Spanish Succession.
But did Queen Anne inherit this war, or did she instigate this war?
I don't know if she instigates it, but she's in power when it happens. I don't know.
Understood.
Okay, so the reason I tell you about privateers.
She's the one that gave Isaac Newton a knighthood.
No way, Queen Anne?
Yeah.
I always think of also that song Queen. There's a Bob Dylan song where one of the lyrics is Queen Anne's lace. I like Queen Anne's lace, the flower, but my wife does not. And on the property here, Queen Anne's lace seems to want to grow, and it just sort of grows and play. And I like it. Wife doesn't want it.
Interesting.
Or perhaps not that interesting. But the problem with these privateers, do you remember when the U.S. poured all that money into helping the Mujahideen kick out the Soviets from Afghanistan?
Yes.
And then you realize later there's blowback, wait, all these people that we trained in sort of guerrilla warfare, what becomes of them after? That's the issue with privateers, because these people are basically pirates, but in times of war, it's sort of allowed, and the blessing is given for it. But then when the war ends, that war ends with something called the Treaty of Utrecht. I have no idea what the terms are, but don't ask me.
It's a famous treaty, like Magna Carta, Treaty of Utrecht. There are, what are the dates? Memorize them, when you're in 5th grade.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Problem with these privateers is these guys get really good at it and battle hardened, and then the war is over, and they're like, okay, there's not a lot of career paths open to me now that really take advantage of my skills other than just full-on piracy.
Right.
So a lot of these privateers just go into full-on pirating, and that does become a problem for countries like England and Netherlands and Spain and France who
Right.
are trying to do a lucrative trade in things like sugar and rum and slaves. And so, in fact, one of the things that happens when there's inevitably like a boom in piracy after, the privateers are all out of work and they go full-time into piracy,
Hmm.
that what the kings sometimes do is they say, okay, now we're announcing a pardon. Okay. And there's a pardon period where if you turn yourself in, if you show up at the office, fill out the paperwork, you confess to all the stuff you did as a pirate, and you do it by this date, then you're pardoned for all of that, but you also have to commit to not being a pirate going forward. And so you might say, okay, well, what are the incentives here? Like, what if you've just been like killing it as a pirate and you're just
Right.
making a lot of money? It's like, why would I turn myself in?
Don't take away my livelihood.
But they also build in some incentives in terms of putting out bounties, where if crew members will turn in a pirate, or if other pirates will capture a
Ooh.
notorious pirate who wouldn't, they can earn money. So it also becomes more dangerous to continue as a pirate. The reason I mention all this stuff about privateers and
Yeah.
pirates,
Sounds like you've really given it some thought. Like
well, I got fascinated. I was like, privateer, I've heard that. What is that? There's words that I don't know. I feel like at a different, if I had started earlier, maybe I could have been a
if you had
privateer.
been exposed to it at an early age, maybe you would have taken significant interest in learning the intricacies and gotten into it and then like really dedicating yourself.
Yeah.
I can see that. I don't think you'd mind like the lack of sleep, some of the lack of access to hygiene and
Yeah, exactly. I'm not big on hygiene. I'm okay with, I've always said I'd be good in prison. I'd do well in prison.
boarding seems a little aggressive for you. Like I feel like you could do it from a distance. Like I think you're good at sitting back and like firing the cannon steady, like no mistakes, like let's just light it the right way.
Yeah, I don't know about the boarding. That sounds stressful. That's not my vibe. And these privateers and pirates were quite good with stuff like grappling hooks. Like they'd get close enough to the boat and then they'd throw the grappling
So
hooks.
cool. Yeah. Like if they had a competition, they would definitely have like grappling hook. Like, okay, what are the pirate Olympics?
Sure. Like if they had like a sort of 1970s era ABC like
Yes,
TV
that
show about it,
show.
like you would definitely, grappling hooks would be one of the, like I could see Bruce Jenner back then. Like now I want to tell you a little bit about the ship. There is a ship which is made, we believe it was made in like 1710. They're not sure. There's some debate. Was it originally made in England, the Netherlands, or France? But at some point, a few years into its service as sort of like a merchant vessel, it's about 100 feet long, about 25 feet across. It's called the Concorde. At some point in the first few years, it definitely is French and it's listed as La Concorde.
Okay.
This is during that war that we talked about earlier. And so so some people believe that it was made in England, but then captured by the French
Mhm.
during that war. And then they put it into service as a very successful part of that triangular trade where you sail down from France down to the west coast of Africa. They get slaves in Africa. They take those to the New World.
Ooh, that took a turn. Sounded like a nice ship, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait, what? Couldn't it have just been a spice ship?
No, slave ship. 1717, this ship has made most of its journey across the Atlantic. It's got, I believe, 500 slaves as well as the crew. And it is intercepted, boarded, captured by a man whose given name, and now the cat's going to be out of the bag here. This guy's given name was believed to be either Edward Teach or Edward Theach or Edward Thatch. But do any of those ring a bell for you? Edward Teach.
Edward Teach does not at all ring a bell.
Me neither, but you may know him by his nom de guerre.
Hmm.
How about that?
This sounds good. He's gonna have a great nickname.
Mr. Blackbeard.
Hello.
Blackbeard.
Wait a second. Wait, back up.
I knew this is where we're going to speed up.
So,
Yeah.
and Edward Teach was on the Concorde?
Edward Teach. So the reason I told that whole thing about privateers versus pirates, Edward Teach was born in England. He was born in Bristol, England. And then as a young man, he worked as a crew member on privateering vessels in the
Ah,
New World. So he's working for the English side, and they're the people who are allowed to just do whatever they want if they run across a French ship or a
right.
Spanish ship. So that's where he kind of makes his bones. He's working under a captain named Hornigold, something Hornigold. And Teach is a tall, broad shouldered, athletic guy, kind of striking in his appearance, very confident. And this guy Hornigold like kind of promotes him rapidly, like sees that this guy is captain material. And one of the things that happens with these pirates is, they're often capturing a ship, and then it's like, okay, we've got 200 crew on our ship. I'm going to pick my second best guy and put him in charge of
Ah,
the new ship and give him like 30 crew to start, and we'll go our separate ways.
have you seen Our Flag Means Death?
No.
Okay, highly recommend it. It's the guy from Flight of the Conchords, the guy who plays
Yeah.
Murray. He plays a pirate, and Blackbeard is involved. I highly recommend Our Flag Means Death.
Wait, the redheaded guy from Flight of the
Yes,
Conchords?
yes,
What
yes.
was his
Plays a pirate,
name? What was his name on
Murray, and he's in a show called Our Flag Means Death, and
Oh.
Blackbeard is a part of it. Highly recommend it. Okay, so Blackbeard,
So he makes his bones as a young man. He's working on a British ship, and he's learning the privateer racket. As the war winds up, it's like, okay, this is the time we make that transition. We're not privateers anymore, we're
wow,
pirates. And he's got his own ship now, and he's on a ship that stops the Queen Anne. And basically, he takes over the ship. Like, I think Blackbeard connotes to people, or they have this idea that he was an incredibly, like, scary, vicious guy or a sadist.
yes, he's scary, right? Isn't he every child's nightmare?
He's definitely scary, and he puts some effort into that. He almost seems like a guy who's aware a couple hundred years early about some of the basics that we understand now for like a celebrity. Like, my appearance alone can help sort of create the reality. So he's got like a long black beard.
Right. So was that done on purpose? Like, is that his trademark? Like, did he like to be known by the beard? Like, was the beard a thing?
Yeah, well, wait, you'll see in a second. So he's got the big beard, and he ties it up in like little, I don't know what you would call it, but he ties it up in some little like pigtails kind of in the beard in colorful ribbon.
What? Wait, hold on, hold on. Blackbeard?
Blackbeard,
He had an ornate way of demonstrating his beard?
not ornate, it's more like it gives flair. Let's call it flair, not
He was
ornate.
going to a shop like Blackbeard didn't just have it ragtag, like, I have this long, scraggly, scary black beard?
No. So it's sort of like little corkscrew. You'll
Pippi Longstocking beard?
check out some of the images. You see what I'm talking about. It's like these sort of thick strands of beard.
Alright,
But
alright.
then he's got the big hat, and he's tall, and he's got the broad shoulders. But here's what I love. Right before he's about to engage in battle, the other thing he'll do is he'll
Mhm.
take a couple of long strips of the fuse they use for cannon, puts them sort of like under his hat so that a few of them are stringing out like with his hair, and he lights them. So there is literally smoke coming from his head whenever he goes into
Oh,
battle.
he's crazy.
But that's the image. Like, he's freaking terrifying when you see him. But the reality is, when he takes a ship, a lot of times all he does is like, okay, this is our ship now. Give me all the valuable stuff. You 500 slaves. I noticed that, unfortunately, many had already died on the trip over. This is the so-called Middle Passage,
Right.
the horrendous conditions, and like just, the worst human conditions you can imagine. A lot of them are already dead or sick, and a lot of the crew are dead or sick. So it's kind of
Oh,
limping into the New World, honestly. When he intercepts it, he sees that all he has
yeah.
to do is like fire the cannon twice, and the captain of La Concorde is like, dude, all yours, take the ship, be nice to my people. And Blackbeard says, okay, well, I don't need all these people.
Was he a killer? Was Blackbeard a killer?
Not a huge killer. He was much more of like, the more you read about him, it's more like a really aggressive sort of corporate or Wall Street bro, like just sort of like
Right.
ambitious and greedy. But he's like, okay, this is what we're going to do. I don't have room on these boats to take this many people. So we're going to pull over to this
But
island.
he's scary. I mean, as a kid, like, Blackbeard is scary.
He's scary during the battle, but then once the surrender happens, he's down to brass tacks.
Then it's like, "Hey, who wants to do my hair tonight?"
Yeah, he's like, "Tell her she's got the night off. This was only 2 shots of the cannon. We're not doing the whole boarding thing. All good. But of the number of people on the ship we just captured, I'm gonna put 80 on this island. We'll just maroon them there. Somebody will get them eventually. We're gonna take the ones that look healthy. We're gonna bring them over, sell them for whatever they're worth when we get to land. And then this is gonna become it becomes his flagship vessel, and he's so successful. So this is 1717 when that happens, okay?
Wow.
And he says, screw it. I don't like the name La Concorde, especially because I'm from England and we were just at war with you guys. So I'm renaming the boat, and it's called Queen Anne's Revenge.
Oh.
So he renames the boat. That's what I'm saying. He understands the importance of names, of image. He goes, this is Queen Anne's Revenge. We're going to go to mainland. We're going to sell the slaves for what we can get. Of the crew, the French crew that we captured, if there's some who look like we might want to use them as crew and they're willing to do that, they can be part of my crew from now on. Others will offload on the mainland. We'll also sell whatever we can on the boat. But they also do a retrofit of the boat because he says, this is not a slave ship anymore. This is a pirate ship. So he starts acquiring cannon, basically, and doing little retrofit.
It's all about the cannon.
Yeah, and cannons of all sizes, from all the way down from like when we talk about a 6-pound cannon, that's the size of the cannonball, obviously. So he's got 6-pound cannons. He's got everything all the way down to like half-pound cannons, and he's got cannons from wherever he can get them. You know, he's got some from England. He's got some from Sweden. He's got crew members, some crew members who are French, some who are English, some who are black, some, he is just, who's good at this? Who's good at boarding? Who can fire the thing? Who's good at navigating?
He's practical.
And he's really successful, but it reminds me a little bit of like he's got a huge name. He's world famous, but if you really look at his years of pirating, it's like 1.5 years or 2 years, and it's somewhat manic. It's like just capturing more and more ships, or getting more and more treasure. He keeps getting a ship, and then he's like, okay, my second best guy on my boat right now is so and so. You're in charge of this boat now. Here's 30 crew. You're part of my team.
Wow.
So he's got like a fleet. At one point, he's got basically like 5 ships, 500, 600 men under his. And one of the things they do that they're famous for is in 1718, he is worried about some of his crew who are having medical issues. I don't know if Blackbeard himself is having medical issues, but he wants medical supplies, like good stuff, not just like,
name brand. I don't want the Band-Aids that don't stick.
He wants name brand. He wants like the big pharma. He doesn't want like the street drug.
But before you go on, because you say big pharma, and I think, of course, sponsorships.
Oh, we've never tried that. And Dramamine. We should check into the seasickness people.
Dramamine is brilliant. Why isn't Lizzie thinking more creatively? Like, I feel like you're doing enough. You do the research.
Lizzie literally brought in a new sponsor.
Well, you introduced last week. Super excited about it. I have not used the internet to find out what riparian rights are. Did you look it up?
I actually did. I think this is like the whole thing about like who has the right to divert water from a river to use for irrigation, or for like on the Colorado River. That's what they're always fighting about, is like riparian rights.
I applaud them for their specific expertise. So let's hear from our latest sponsor, and we'll regroup on the other side.
Sounds good. Nothing ruins a day on the water like getting cited for operating while impaired. If this happens to you or a loved one, call Harmony in Hanrahan. With offices in both Spring Hill and Bayport, Harmony in Hanrahan specializes in waterway litigation. This includes unlawful boat repossessions, riparian rights, disputed access points, and boats jeopardized by divorce proceedings or regulatory action. Harmony in Hanrahan will get you back on the water.
All right, so let's get back to it. Before we heard from our latest sponsor, I was asking you about the origin of the name change. It changed from the Concorde or Le Concorde, and it went to Queen Anne's Revenge.
So remember, he had just finished serving as a privateer during Queen Anne's War, and I think there was leftover hostility toward the French. So when he took a French boat, he was like, okay, this is Queen Anne's revenge.
Got it.
He also, I think, there may have had some allegiance to Queen Anne is the last of some royal family. I don't know if it's the Stuarts, but I think he had an allegiance to the Stuart line or something. And if you think about it, Concord is the opposite of what he's doing, because concord means like harmonious or getting along. You know what I mean? It's like the opposite of discordant.
Interesting. Yeah, it all ties in. All right, so Blackbeard, he's renamed the ship. And he's got several ships.
Yeah, he's got several ships. He's always got he's got this big one. It's a frigate. It moves fast, but it's also got a bunch of guns on it. And then he's got like sloops. I don't know how big a sloop is. It must be smaller, but he's got a few of those by now.
Sounds like the Beach Boys, right?
Yeah. I don't know if any of them were the John B, the sloop John B.
That's the sloop.
But I do know that one of them, when he does this thing where he sort of like says, okay, you're good on my crew. You're now in charge of this sloop we just grabbed. And here's 20 guys. And you get to name your sloop. And so that guy says, and again, I'm going to show off my French accent. He names his sloop the Mauvais Encontre, which means like the bad meeting.
Oh, hold on. I have to get my fan. Can you say that one more time?
This is all very sudden. Mauvais Encontre. This is bad meeting. So that guy names his boat the Bad Meeting, which I think is an awesome name for a boat, especially for a pirate boat, like.
Right. Queen Anne's Revenge sounds a little obvious. It's a little bit like, okay, we get it. So I think like having something a little more ironic, like a little more menacing.
Yeah. Where it's when a sloop pulls up and you're like, oh, the sloop pulls up. You're like, oh, hey guys. What? Oh, shit.
Oh, the King's Revenge. We're so mad. I don't know.
Yeah. Bad Meeting is a better name. But one of the things he does, so have you ever seen, and I know I'm going a lot of directions, it'll all come together, but did you ever see a movie called Hell or High Water?
I did not.
It's a movie about bank robbers in Texas, but modern bank robbers, like, in the 1980s during the savings and loan crisis. It's based on real events. But the reason I mention it is it's like these guys are having some success robbing these banks, but it feels like there's something that happens, whether it's with pirates or with bank robbers, or maybe even with like corporate takeover guys, where they have some success, but it almost seems to speed them up and make them more and more hungry. Like, I got to keep swallowing something bigger. I got to keep moving forward. I don't know what that is, but Blackbeard definitely has that. Like,
how old is Blackbeard roughly?
I mean, I think he dies at the age, he dies soon after at the age of like 30.
Wow.
It's like those Roman emperors we talked about. Right. Like, a lot of stuff goes down by the time they're 30. They've already like conquered other countries and stuff. Okay.
Wow.
So, but one of the things he does that he's apparently known for is he's very keyed into what makes a boat operate well, who are good crew, who aren't good crew. If you're not good crew, he might just pull up on an island and say, get off the freaking boat.
Today they call that recruiting, but go on.
Well, but my point is he's recruiting, but he'll pull up to an island and dump the other people, even if there's no like shelters on that island or no reliable. He's just like, okay, good luck, guys. At least I'm not killing you. I mean, I might be killing you, but at least there's a chance you'll get rescued.
But you would expect in some ways he has to live up to his name. You can't make him too cuddly. He's abandoning people to die.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely like cutthroat and all about the business and not sentimental, but he's not like massacring lots of people.
Well, I mean, if you leave them on the island to die, it's almost like put them out of their misery. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's a Caribbean. There's a lot of islands. There's a lot of boat traffic. At least that's a little less terrifying than
Coconut.
Okay, walk the plank.
True, and I saw Castaway. Like, you never know what's going to happen. Like,
we should see if maybe the Tom Hanks production company will sponsor this episode, because we've hit Castaway and also the pirate movie.
That's two references in one show. I feel like, do we get royalties for that?
Well, can we get paid any more than we're already earning? Okay, so when he gets a good crew, he would like to keep them healthy if he can. And he does want the latest in good medical equipment. So in a sort of aggressive move, he gets that flagship boat, Queen Anne's Revenge, and he gets 4 or 5 other boats. and he sails them all in to blockade the Charleston harbor in South Carolina. He's not going to let any boats out, any boats in until they send out a full chest of the latest in medical supplies.
Ooh.
Okay.
Wow.
One problem is, so one of the quickest ways to just try to do that transaction is he, one of the first boats that tries to come out, he just grabs it and he says to this guy, look, 2 of my men are going to take you back into town. You explain what we need, what we've come for, and that no boats are going to be able to leave this harbor or come into it until we get our medicine. Go. So he sends him in with 2 of his guys, but then he's expecting to get the guy back, to see the guy coming back the next day or the day after that. And soon he's like, all right, it doesn't look like they're paying attention to us. Let's maybe move in closer and start to like fire on ships or fire on. At the last minute, the guy that he sent in there shows up with the chest of medicine, and Blackbeard's like, dude, what gives? It took you like 4 days. He said, I was ready to come back 2 hours after I get there, I get the chest. He said, the problem was the 2 dudes you sent me with got roaring drunk and were on a 3-day bender, and I literally could not find them. I had to get a different ride out here to bring you this.
It's not like there's a Super 8. It's like, where do you find these guys? Like,
and this is off the coast of South Carolina. And he's like, how am I going to get out there? Nobody wants to drive the boat out to deliver me to Blackbeard's. Everybody's freaked out. They're like, Blackbeard's in our harbor with all his boats. None of the ships are coming in. Our loved ones are like stuck on the wrong side of the blockade. So anyway, this guy brings the chest of medicine, and Blackbeard says, perfect. He goes, all right, everybody back off. Let's go back down to the Caribbean, back to our pirating ways. Oh, and then what happens is, the pirate's life is dangerous. And there are powerful people, whether they're political figures or business figures in some of the colonies or provinces along the east coast of what will become America, who, are saying to the English crown, this is really becoming a problem. The pirates are putting a big dent in our whole project over here.
But what does Blackbeard do with the chest of medicine? Does he get the heck out of there?
Yeah, he just backs off. He goes, and we're gonna treat people for whatever they need to be treated with, and we can get back into business. But the thing I mentioned about that bank robbery movie is it does feel like if you saw a movie about Blackbeard, and there are plenty of them, I'm sure. In fact, the Queen Anne's Revenge even features in one of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Oh, really?
At some point, Johnny Depp winds up on the Queen Anne's Revenge at some point.
I have not seen those movies.
But it does have that feeling like the last year and a half of his life, it's like it's both the time when he's coming most famous and some of his biggest, richest captures, but it's also, there's more people after him.
When you're on the top, everyone's targeting you.
Yeah, exactly. There's a governor in Virginia who's just over it. And he's like, this is not working for us.
Forget this guy.
Yeah, we got to get him. And there's some tension because there's a governor. I don't think North Carolina is a colony. It's like a province or at that point. And that governor is more sort of cozy with Blackbeard. They're not friends, but he's sort of they have a gentleman's agreement. Just don't blow up certain ships, and just your guys are kind of rough. So when you do come in to land, maybe go down to Ocracoke, or it's just a rougher part of town or something. You know what I mean? So that guy in North Carolina, he's sort of letting him operate, whereas the guy up in Virginia is like, screw this, I'm sending ships for him, we're going to get him. The other thing that's fascinating, in 1718, after the successful blockade, some of the ships he captures are documented, but there are plenty of smaller ones that aren't. It's like he's run across a small ship, easy peasy.
Okay, did you write that one down?
Yeah.
No, that's sloop? We just got the sloop.
Dude, we did that with 1 grappling hook and 2 cabin boys. Before the grappling hook was thrown, those guys had all dived into the water when they saw your smoking hat.
Right, it's like taking a putt inside a 3 feet. It's like, okay.
That's a gimme. You can get off your boat. Sometime in 1718, he does something interesting with 2 of his ships, both his flagship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, and then a second ship called the Adventure. It appears that he purposely grounds them.
What?
He just runs them straight off the coast of North Carolina, and then he uses smaller boats in his fleet, or that are smaller boats that were on the Queen Anne's Revenge, to offload the valuable stuff and offload the crew that he wants to keep, and to get rid of the crew that he doesn't. And part of the thinking behind this is that I guess there's basic rules in piracy that it's almost like a law firm where it's like there's shares of the new plunder. And so sometimes there was an advantage to getting rid of a bunch of your crew before you paid out the shares.
Classic.
So yeah.
Before we cash out, we're going to get these guys off the book.
We're going to get them off the books. We know we have people chasing us. One thing he doesn't like about the Queen Anne's Revenge is it's big and it's identifiable.
How are we going to get away on the Queen Anne's? Everyone knows the Queen Anne's.
Exactly. So he decides, like, we're going to junk the ship. We're going to get the valuable stuff off. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to take all the cannons off, but we're going to run it aground. Same with the Adventure. We're going to leave a bunch of people either on those ships, or maybe if we're feeling nice, we'll like let them on the rowboats over to that little like island over there. But basically, we're pivoting now so that all of these people that are coming to kill me, they're not going to be able to find the Queen Anne's Revenge anymore.
And was it referred to as pivoting back then? Like, was that?
No, I like to use that term.
Like, I wonder if they had their version of like, wait, Blackbeard, are we pivoting now? Like, is this when we pivot because we're getting in these smaller boats and Carlos is staying behind?
This is more of a rebranding. He was a strategist, and I don't think he let a lot of people in on his thinking. So he was just that dude who's like, okay, run it aground. And people are like, what? He's like, run it aground. You know, he was just like, all right, all of you get into this boat. All of you get the rowboat. Good luck. Go to the island, whatever.
Right.
I'm going in this sloop. So-and-so, you're coming. He was that dude. You know what I mean? That's 17, 18, but really, and there may have been some paranoia. There may have been some paranoia and fear because at the same time that he was becoming famous, he was also becoming sort of like whatever the equivalent of like being on the FBI's most wanted list was. And there's some evidence that once in a while he would use a different name. Like he would just, you know, if they entered a ship and he didn't want people to know that he'd even been in the area, he'd say, yeah, I'm Captain Jennison or whatever. You know, he just come up with a different name.
Of course he would. But the least surprising part of this whole story is that he didn't use his real name. Like, it's him being like a brilliant, you know, maritime strategist, or he had the big ship and he disguised his name. He didn't use his real name. Of course he didn't use his real name. You think he's going to check in as Blackbeard?
Last name? Blackbeard. First name? It's just Blackbeard.
Here we are 300 some odd years later, and who are we speaking about? Blackbeard. Clearly, what he did at the time was fairly significant if you're being spoken about 300 some odd years later.
He was certainly in the popular imagination, and people were scared of him. You know, he just, because of all the things we've talked about, he had a reputation. And dude, it was scary enough to try to take a boat from, you know, Africa to the New World, or France to the New World, you know, just to do it, even just fighting the elements.
It was not an easy trip. Half the people on the Mayflower died, like on the way over.
And then if you throw in this other thing, there's privateers and pirates, and, you know, every time a ship comes on the horizon, you're like, okay, am I about to die? Or is this somebody who speaks my language and is on my side?
All right, so where's he headed?
Okay, so he downsizes, he gets on a smaller ship. He goes next to one of his favorite little hiding places along the Carolina coast, an island called Ocracoke Island. He has the crew drop anchor in a little inlet there. And that way he's sort of on land, but he's also, you know, he has access to the ocean if he needs to make a quick getaway.
It sounds mellow, like not a lot of, you know, waves.
It sounds mellow, and he also felt like, okay, he's ready for a break, ready for a little, you know, his guys ready for a little R&R, and also they're feeling a little extra wealthy because, like, look, when it comes time to hand out the shares, we just offloaded 40% of our people, so we're actually much richer just for how it's kind of like the way private equity, you know, will take over, come and just fire everybody and then just somehow make money at the end of it all. So they go up this inlet, and he's docked there. He and his men are partying. I guess they don't leave enough security or lookouts or whatever. So some of the ships that have been directed by the governor of Virginia, but also the English crown, follow him up the inlet. And
it's not going to go well for Blackbeard.
They engage with him. And even though he was lax at the beginning, he and his men are the exact opposite of the situation we had with the Vasa that you talked about last week, where it's like all these elementary errors. These guys have been working in dangerous conditions and thriving for years, and they're really good at all the grappling hooks and the hand-to-hand combat and the boarding and the
Right, this is their specialty.
Yeah, this is what they do. His guys start, firing the guns that they have. In fact, they, I don't know what size cannon they shoot, but the first ship that's coming close to them, they hit, and they're the ones who are like, oh, we can jump on board and kill these people. But the people on that ship pull a trick. The captain, Maynard, he stays on deck at the stern, and he directs most of his men below deck. And he says, wait for them to board, and then when they get on board and they're starting to order us around or tell us to do this or that, then you come up and attack. And it works.
Oh, wow.
Blackbeard's guys do not realize when they get on that there's a bunch of people hiding below. They pop up from under, and it's people have both guns but also cutlass, like a cutlass, I guess, is a big sword, and so they're fighting with those also. And
oh my god, it is like a movie.
It is like a movie, especially because I think Blackbeard and Maynard, basically the two captains, wind up in a cutlass. They both got their cutlass out and are whacking at each other. Yeah, and Blackbeard apparently is good with the cutlass, and on one strike, the other guy, Maynard's cutlass, breaks at the hilt. And so everybody's like, oh, and the accounts from people who were there say Blackbeard kind of had him where he wanted him, but two of Maynard's guys set upon Blackbeard with their cutlasses and stab him to death and hack him to pieces. Then, just as a little calling card and to help spread the word, they cut off Blackbeard's head and they hang it from the prow of their boat.
What?
Yeah.
You're gotta be kidding me.
I'm not kidding.
Unnecessary.
This is a famous head. This is the fuses. This is the ribbons. So they want to broadcast to the world, this guy's done. We're the ones who did it. And so they sail their ship for however many days with Blackbeard's head hanging from the prow.
Unbelievable.
Now, you may say, well, you can say, like, Kit, you're telling a lot of gory details. You're just kind of cramming me with information. What about a shipwreck? Where's a shipwreck?
How far into this episode are we?
Feels like 3 hours. I don't know what it actually is.
We're not called, killer biographies like with Blackbeard, and this is shipwrecks. Like, I don't want to lose the precious few listeners we have.
Oh my God, is today Thursday? I thought it was Wednesday. We do killer biographies on Wednesday.
My point is, we need a ship, and the Queen Anne has already been grounded.
Yeah, we sure do. Well, here's the good news: the Queen Anne was grounded and disappeared for, what is that, almost 300 years, and in 1996, 30 feet below water, a company called Intersal.
Hold on, before we get into any potential legal, are you a shareholder of this new company? Does this predate your investment days?
I think the most accurate way to put it is that I'm not currently invested in this company or any of its subsidiaries. Okay, 1996, they track it down. They find the Queen Anne's Revenge. And they can't believe it because Queen Anne's Revenge is sort of up there with the Vasa. It's from the golden era of piracy.
I cannot believe I have not heard of it.
And like I said, if you're one of those people who watched all the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, then you know the Queen Anne's Revenge. If you're a fan of the band Flogging Molly, kind of an Irish sound, they have a song called Queen Anne's Revenge. So in 1996, people from this private company find it. And it's a big deal because it's Blackbeard's boat. It's the boat that he was most famous for running. And like I said, it's the opposite of last week's boat in that when they confirm that this is what it is and they start picking up the pieces, they find 30 cannon, and they've already brought up 24 of those by now. They're like all different sizes. Some are from Sweden, some are from England. I think maybe some are from France, but it's like, it is exactly what you would expect from a pirate ship, which is, it's like a pawn shop. It's like, dude, we get it where we can get it. They also find some of those medicines that had been in that medicine chest, and you're going to be very excited about the crown jewel of the medicine cabinet is the urethral syringe. Any guesses on the urethral syringe?
I was not pre-med. I did think about pre-med, but I do know what that type of device probably means, and I cannot believe that was included in a chest that pirates acquired.
Okay. So and now you can see why they were so desperate to get in there, because the urethral syringe was for the treatment of venereal disease.
Of course, all those islands, and
Yeah.
who knows what's going on.
Yeah, his island down there, the Blackbeard's like
Mhm.
place he liked to hang out was called New Providence. Basically, it's like Nassau, and it sounds like it was a rough area, colorful, and whatever sin or vice you can think of.
But this was preserved after 300 years?
The urethral syringe, yeah. So you would inject
Unbelievable.
mercury into the urethra.
Yeah, that sounds risky.
Yeah. And dude, and on a rocking ship, can you imagine?
I mean, those ships, even those that did well in the lurch test, were bound to be very rocky.
This boat would have killed it in the lurch test. And if he had not run it aground and it had just gone to some more peaceful, it would have gone on for a long time and been a useful ship for a long time. Okay, what else do they find? It's found about a mile offshore. It's not in international waters. The state of North Carolina does have some strong claims to it. And so they say to the private company, let's do an agreement where you guys will get all the rights to stuff like video, both underwater of the wreck as it exists, and then all the video showing the artifacts coming up. I'm going to guess thousands of artifacts, but they say, we don't want you, your private company, to take the coins or like the gold dust or this or whatever. We want it all to live in one place, but you're going to get the rights to certain things. The permanent collection is going to live here in North Carolina. Let's see. What are some of the things they find? Well, they find a lot of cannons, and the cannons have markings on them where you can see exactly when they were built. And some of them were already old cannons even before the ship was, like, some of the cannons had been built in 1640. It's like 80 years earlier. They also find pipes. They find pipe tampers to tamp down the tobacco. They find the cannons. They find the cannonballs. They find navigational equipment like the little brass, dials and stuff like that. I mean, it's all encrusted, but then when they clean it all off, they, nice shiny equipment. Some disappointment to me. No coins really so far. And they found plates, and pewter.
Oh, cool. I love when they find the plates.
But it's not the fine ceramic stuff. This is like pewter. This is like
More like canteen.
This is a working
That's
ship.
more like army versus like,
Yeah.
here's your China.
Yeah, think of like the summer camp, and you got your canteen. It's more down
Right,
that
it's
thing.
all one unit.
Some gold dust. But remember what happened when it went down. It was a meditated thing. We're getting rid of these ships and we're taking most of what we can that's valuable.
Right.
Okay.
Of course.
But the cannons,
You're not going to find any good tobacco.
they believe that there were 40 cannons on that ship so far. They've found 30 of them, and they've been able to bring up 24 of them. The photos are impressive. The website to go to is QAR, standing for Queen Anne's Revenge, QARonline.org. And then you navigate to the gallery of the artifacts. Incredible, including the urethral syringe.
Wow. How did I not know that they discovered Blackbeard's ship? I think there's a part of me that wondered if Blackbeard was even real.
Oh, he was real. He was real.
He was definitely real. And he had that name, Edward Teach, or what's his name?
Back then spelling was not standardized, so it was common that a name would get spelled in different ways in different places. So the different ways it's spelled is either Edward Teach, Edward Theach, or Edward Thatch. So those are the three spellings that are given for him. But soon he was just Blackbeard, which was simpler and easier to spell.
And easier to remember.
People who are interested can go to the website and see, like, can you actually go and visit and see these artifacts? But you can definitely see them online.
Did they bring the ship up? Like, was the ship in a condition that they could raise? Like, does the ship exist? Or was it just the artifacts from the ship that they
I
brought
should
up?
really know that, but I don't.
You'd think, because you had a week, and I know you were traveling, but you'd think since it's your ship, like we would know the state of the shipwreck. This episode comes with homework.
If I were to if we do a grade, I'm a B minus, something like that is fine with me. I will say this about the
Fascinating ship. I just was curious if, like, well, do they have the ship or is it still underwater?
yeah, and I was tugged in a few different directions because I got more fascinated by Blackbeard, especially when he was running out of time, and then his head is hanging off. He had me at the slow fuses
Unbelievable.
burning in his hair and under his hat coming into bed.
Very cinematic. Like, again, put that in a movie and people are like, yeah, right.
But the world of shipwreck recovery was rocked in 1996 when it was confirmed that this is the Queen Anne's Revenge. That was a big deal just because it was Blackbeard and it was his most famous ship. And but one of the challenges was most of the ship, like the actual structure of the ship, was under about 4 feet of sand. So that if you do watch the videos, there's a lot of the kind of like it looks like a shop vac, like the sucking the sand off and then
Right.
especially in contrast with last week where your Swedes did such a beautiful job bringing the entire Vasa up.
Yeah, they took years.
Yeah, they sounded super well organized. Nobody was going to their Supreme Court to fight among each other, whereas this feels a little bit more like, I mean, just when you see them lifting a single cannon onto the boat, it's like maybe we should have gotten a bigger boat. Like the boat that they're putting the cannon on is sort of violently rocking, just trying to put this cannon on the back.
This is Blackbeard. Let's put some effort into it.
Yeah, and I think the company is a little bit like the dog that catches the car. Like the company that found it, when I see their boat that they're doing some of this work, let's just say it's not like Vescovo level financial backing. And like I said, a single cannon they put on the boat, it's like, oh God, I think these guys might wreck, Like this shouldn't be, it shouldn't be like a 50-50 chance every time we pick up one of these 30 cannons. Like
today's shipwreck is a ship that went out to get the shipwreck of Blackbeard. And upon getting one cannon, then that ship
we're
sunk.
definitely eventually, if we do enough seasons of this, we're eventually going to do one.
We'll get to that point where it's like, when did this show jump the shark? I think it was when they talked about the boats that capsized, recovering elements of the ship that they were finding. That would be that.
So the reason I mentioned that it's a more of a smaller operation is that I just am not sure that they've had the resources yet to extract the entire 100-foot frigate from under the 4 feet of sand. Like it sounds like, dude, they don't even have all the cannons.
You think that some crazy obsessive billionaire would say like, oh, I want to get Blackbeard's ship in my house. I'm going to pay
the whole thing.
Yeah. Just I'll pay $100 million. Just go get the ship.
Whatever it takes. Yeah. And I think they're going to have to do that thing with it. Maybe, I don't know, where, you inject some sort of like chemical that will stiffen it up, that'll make it harder so that it doesn't all just like fall apart when it comes up. When we're done, look up some images of Blackbeard. The drawings of him at that time, they said, by the end, before the head hanging from the prow, before that, his reputation was preceding him. And so sometimes by the time they pulled up to a boat, people were like, no problem. Like they just lay down all their weapons. And he would say to them, who wants to join me? Who wants to be left on this nearby island? I thought he was like a sadist and a serial killer. It seems more like he's just greedy.
All right. Well, incredible. I mean, what a great story. I mean, again, very biography heavy and great.
Yeah, pretty. I probably set the record this week for how long it took me to get to the shipwreck.
But the Queen Anne's Revenge, I mean, and so cool that it exists and that we can see photographs of all of these artifacts.
Look up the drawings of him and look up qaronline.org and navigate to the artifacts. It will blow your mind.
Cannot wait. And Dr. Troyer, we do need to say to rate, to share, to review. What are all the things that Lizzie tells us in terms of promoting the show? Because we do have sponsors. We have an obligation to grow our audience. How do we do that?
Let me see. She sent me a message here. We are to ask our listeners to rate,
takes a minute,
review,
or less,
and subscribe. So, you hit the little, it's like the little stars, like they're not filled in, and then you just like tap on them and then they fill in. Tap those in, 5 of those. short review, something to the effect of, my life was changed. I found, faith in God again after listening to this. Just something simple, just honest.
Positive reviews. Why not? Takes a second. So let's get to our outro music. Fantastic story of the Queen Anne's Revenge. And we will see everybody next week.
Sounds good.
Life jackets are stored in overhead racks on the second deck and in storage boxes on the top deck. Instructions for donning life jackets are located around the vessel. Brainstorm.